You guys as recruiters about each of you. It's really a testament, I think, to how you do leading the admissions office. So it's a good to have you in front here to talk about your experience leading recruitment, leading outreach, leading admissions team. So it should be a good experience. We're going to record it, and then we're going to sell it online to train other new to your I'll catch you guys on. We'll see that.
That video is going to be nothing compared to last night's video.
Well, there is a video.
Oh, you're
How about each of you guys start out? Just tell me a little bit about your background before you came to the position you're at now. A little bit about what your current position is. So we'll just start with Ari, work our way down the line here.
Okay, well, let's see. Before I even moved to Colorado, I was for 3.5 years working as basically a trio program counselor. It was called Education Opportunity Program. Anyone who's gone to one of the UC programs or CU programs know apply to that program. For 3.5 years, and then I did a little bit of outreach on the high school side with the Up and Down program. Then when I got to Denver, I worked for a year with a youth-serving nonprofit in Northeast Denver. And then I was actually hired as a recruitment coordinator at Community College of Denver, and the department at that time did not have a director. Actually, there were 2 recruiters and 2 recruitment coordinators and an admin person who reported directly to the dean. And it was the dean of students, along with advising in student life, so that was interesting. And then a couple of years in, I kind of made a proposal, and they moved me up to the director position, and now 5, 6, 7 years later. So does that answer the question?
And what do you like? What do you oversee?
Oh, that's the question. Okay, that's the next part. Well, what I currently oversee is basically 3 aspects of our program: the Welcome Center, tours, our student ambassador program, the recruitment team, which consists now of 3 recruiters, and actually orientation, which just came on board about a year ago now. But over my history at CCD, I've overseen the call center. I've overseen and actually built our cyber center lab. I actually did the proposal to get all those computers for online registration for students. And that's now, those have been fielded off to the admissions team, which gives us a lot more flexibility to focus on just the recruiting and the campus visitations and orientation.
My name is Ashley Maloney. I'm the Director of Outreach and Enrollment Services at Front Range Community College Westminster campus. My title as Director is still, to me, feels very recent. About this time last year, I started in this capacity. My position has grown significantly since I started at Front Range. I started at Front Range, it was my first professional job after grad school 6 years ago. Prior to that, I had been a really active student leader at the University of Wyoming, and then did some student ambassador, started a club there, RA, assistant hall director, so student activities, concert planning, so had a lot of that leadership skills that brought me to this place today. Grad school, more student life stuff, as well as my second year I was a graduate assistant to the grad program, and I coordinated all of the prospective student inquiries. I set up tables. So that experience led me to be qualified for the recruitment coordinator position at Front Range. So it was interesting because when I took that position, they just merged it with the call center. So, and I still look back and find it interesting, in my interview, they didn't ask anything about my supervisory experience or my philosophy. They just trusted me to do the job, which I'm really thankful that I'm here, because those are really important questions for me to ask. But but it's grown so much. That first year I was the only recruiter, and then the next year I got another. That person didn't last very long, so I ended up with Hannah and Ryan at the same time. Most of you all know them, and we just flourished. So now it's even bigger. It keeps getting bigger, and that's where the director came in last year, because we now receive the Welcome Center, which is our one-stop shop. So it's not just outreach and recruitment anymore. We are frontline services for advising, financial aid. We provide all the general information, as well as to prospective students, information about our continuing education programs. I mean, you just name it, we are that go-to place. So I consider we have 3 units underneath my department now: the Welcome Center, our outreach team, and then our call center. So there's 2 administrative assistants in the call center and about 8 students. In the outreach portion, I now have a coordinator and then 2 recruiters. I don't really like that word, so outreach reps. And then about 5 to 10 ambassadors. And then the Welcome Center has about 8 students, 2 shared employees, so they're dual report. They are primarily admissions and records employees, but then I also oversee their performance at the front desk, and then I have a part-time employee. So it's just ballooned tremendously in the last 6 years.
And good morning, my name is Howard Fukai. I am the Director for Student Recruitment and Outreach, formerly known as Pre-Enrollment Services at ACC. And the reason for the name change, because basically no one knows what Pre-Enrollment Services does. And first-time prospective individuals who come to campus, they see pre-enrollment, they don't know that we're in the recruiting department. As far as my background, actually started as an adjunct faculty member with the Community College Aurora. Started teaching part-time with them way back in 1989. So started part-time. A position opened up in the academic advising department at Community College Aurora. I applied. I got the job. Was an academic advisor for approximately about 7 years. And then I was asked to coordinate scholarships, and also I was asked to coordinate it was then called the PSEO, Post-Secondary Enrollment Options Program, now called Concurrent Enrollment. So I kind of had all of those job duties under my belt. A position opened up at Arapahoe Community College as a coordinator for, back then it was called High School Relations. It was a 1 recruiter position. I applied, got the job, and I've been at ACC ever since. So altogether, I've been in the state community college system like 23 years. Wow. So, well, the good thing about it is...
Too young to retire, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm seeing, the different aspects of higher education, from the instructional in the classroom side, the student services side, the one-on-one academic component. I think my academic advising experience helped me immensely becoming a recruiter. When you're out there talking to prospective students, the more you know about the individual specific programs, the insight, what classes, what goes on, it's going to help you as a recruiter. So great experience regarding that. Now my department consists of, I have 3 recruiting specialists. 2 of them are here, Karen and Edward. And also I have Michael Godby, who primarily does non-traditional student outreach in my department. I have 1 office coordinator who primarily runs a lot of he does a lot of the data management. My department is we still oversee a portion of concurrent enrollment. So each one of my staff members are required to meet individually with all the concurrent enrolled high school students who come to our campus and take classes. We do like an informal mini orientation session with each concurrent high school student, making sure that they understand the rules, regulations, policies, procedures. They're going into the college environment. And we also oversee an ambassador program also. And right now we have, about 6 ambassadors. So that's what's going on at ACC.
Sounds good. Can you talk about what you say your management style or philosophy is, and if that's changed over the years?
Start. Well, actually, a couple of years ago, I had to write this comprehensive exam paper, and some of you may have read it, on my leadership philosophy. So my leadership philosophy is this concept of the servant leader. Some of you may have heard of that concept before. And the idea is that it's much less of this sort of hierarchical, I'm your boss, you do what I say. It's much more of trying to do two things. First of all, give people the tools and the information they need to do their jobs well, and also that encouragement, but also, I guess I'm now on three things. So the tools and the encouragement, I'll say, are one, but also the idea is that you want to develop them so that they can eventually become leaders. I don't know if anyone's ever worked for someone who you just get the sense that all they want you to do is that one little sliver that's in your job description, and they want you to keep doing that forever and ever and ever. And they don't really, and you even sometimes get the sense that they don't ever want you to leave just because it makes it harder on you, and on them. And anybody who knows me has known that over the years, people know Melissa Quinteros, Roman Hollowell, Deborah Suniga, who's now director at ACC. Those folks all worked for me at one point. Nahum Kistner, who's now basically an assistant director in a different department at CC. And I've always tried to encourage people to really be able to move on, using that servant leadership. Of course, that leadership style doesn't necessarily fit in sometimes with some of the other leadership styles that are higher up in the hierarchies in either our institutions or the system office. But one thing you learn if you ever go into a leadership program is you have to develop your own leadership philosophy, and you have to be willing to stick with it.
My philosophy is very similar to Ari's, that servant leadership and collaborative nature. I feel like I work alongside most of the time, and not as much of that hierarchical figure. I like to be that liaison. How can I bring back the information? What do you need? How can I get that those resources for you? I think one of my biggest successes has been really in touch with that emotional intelligence. So really caring about each individual as a person and connecting with them personally. That just knowing that there's things that go on outside of their life or where they, professionally, where do they want to go. Just being able to invest. I feel like I invest in my staff as much as I do invest in the students that I work with that are coming in the door. I really want the best for them, and much like Ari said, I know that a lot of times the recruiter outreach position is that your foot in the door and an entry-level position. But I think that we, at least at Front Range, have been able to develop those roles into bigger roles than just going to set up a table. I really value the experience and the education that comes in with the staff, and I think just trying to nurture that passion and helping them to get to what their next steps, what they'd like to do.
And yeah, same. I totally believe in the team approach, team philosophy. Whatever we do in our department, it really has a team focus. For example, when we have our Discover ACC Preview Day, it's not one. There is one individual who kind of coordinates that, but it is a team approach. Everyone will have a part in all of our projects, all of our events. It's not like it's one person's responsibility. Everyone has to partake, and it's really a team philosophy. When we go over the calendar of recruiting events that are going on, it's a team approach. Everyone has to pitch in. Everyone has to take turns doing night, weekend events. So everyone kind of has a say-so as to what goes on and the procedure, the things that we do in the department and so forth. So.
Well, how do you balance, not all we have to answer this, but how do you balance where you have that servant leadership, where you are helping people get ahead? So you do that, but you're still the leader, and it doesn't become the point where you're self-sacrificing, where you're like, well, I'll just take care of that. Because there's times where your time needs to be spent on doing some of the strategic thinking. So how do you make that balance between being that servant that's willing to chip in and help out with everything, and then also making sure you keep your priorities straight?
And well, the thing is, I kind of handpick, of course, everyone handpicks their employees, but the individuals that I select, everyone kind of understands there's one central focus mission of the institution, and everything kind of centers around that. So they understand, okay, here's the department mission, here's our focus, everything centers around that. It just, as far as, it makes it easier as far as this team approach goes.
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I think that's something that I definitely struggled with over the years, especially because I started out as a recruitment coordinator. And And in fact, the first 2 or 3 years that I was director, I still had, I think, 1 or 2 schools. And I think I've really finally gotten to that point where you do have to remain the leader. You know, even if you play that servant role, you do still have to remain the leader. And I think especially when you're a servant leader that is not in a system that is about servant leadership, that's really much more about hierarchy, you still have to hold yourself and your department accountable to the outputs that are expected of you. And I think that that's something that probably, I'm guessing if you ask my staff, you know, we do cool stuff, we collaborate, we do all that, and then there's just some time where it's like, hey guys, it's this, and we don't have a choice in this, and it's not even necessarily the way I would have done it, but that's what it is. So you kind of be that mediator force. And there are also some times when I have to not do a project and delegate it. Something that I could probably do a little faster or a little bit better, in my mind, I'm thinking. But what I'm noticing, especially with my current staff, is that when I delegate and show them that I trust them and empower them, they actually do better than I would have done at times. And that's a good thing. That's not something for a leader to be intimidated by. Some leaders get intimidated by that if they feel like they're not always the star of the show.
You know, Howard, you mentioned you kind of handpick your recruiter, stuff like that. Anyone can sound good in an hour interview. How do you find and hire the right people you want on your team?
Well, first and foremost, for a recruiting position, what we're really looking for is that individual who exemplifies and shows immediately that customer service aspect. Because a lot of things, you can teach banner, you can teach the data management, you can teach input and so forth. The thing that's really hard to teach is the customer service aspect. So we're really looking at people-focused, people-centered individuals. And also, the other thing that we look at is good work ethic. So we devise and we do. We've done role plays in our interviews. We've done kind of put them on the spot, and we've done scenarios that they have to perform and so forth. Really put them on the spot, and number one, they have to show good customer service skills, and they have to also show willingness for good, be a good hard worker. Everything else we can teach in the department.
What about, you guys want to add anything on your selection process?
Much like Howard said, I feel like if we look for the right characteristics that we need for the department, we can always train content. Of course, it's great if folks know financial aid or the enrollment process, but that stuff is all trainable. So I think 1 hour is not enough to get to know someone and what they can contribute. So it's typically about a 3-hour. So the first interview is with about 5 people, and it's for an hour. So it's that initial, give us the top 3 to 4 candidates. And then once they get to the next level, which is typically with me and our Dean of Student Services, it's typically about a 3-hour interview. So about an hour conversation with the dean and me. Then there's usually a campus tour with a student ambassador, because I really think it's important to get that student perspective. Is this person approachable? What type of questions does that person ask of the student? Sometimes I've had candidates decline the tour because they think it's not important, which to me sends a really big message that you don't want to know the campus, you don't want to get to know the student. I don't think I've ever hired anyone that declined the tour. Because that's our job, right? So, and then the next piece, I like a writing sample, because communication is so vitally important. And I learned this from an interview I had at CSU. So I sat down at a computer and had to respond to 2 email requests, and one was to a parent and one was to a student. And just to see how they would handle those situations. And then I could see what the writing was like. They were allowed to use the website, because it's all about knowing how to use your resources and get that information. How do they sign it at the end? So I would even say I'd like it more than 3 hours to do some additional scenario training. But I think that's given me a pretty good feel for folks, and I'd say our people tend to stay a long time in our department. So we're pretty close.
Yeah, I would just say in our institution, there's been a big focus recently on the job descriptions themselves and making sure that the people first meet the minimum job description. So I think the way the job descriptions are written is important. Clearly, yeah, if you have that great, those great interpersonal skills, that's fantastic. But sometimes when it so comes down to the job description says a minimum of X number of years here, and you could have 20 people with a horrible personality who meet that, and you could have 10 people with great personalities who don't meet those minimums, and you're going to only get those 20 people, so to speak. We don't have that issue, of course, with our institution because of the way we've written the job descriptions, but I think those role plays, I think, are critical, and a lot of times I will role play. I myself will be the rude student or the rude high school counselor who's mad because that position's been vacant. So, and those are very telling. Kim?
I have a situation I need some help with. I'm fairly new to managing people, and we just rewrote the job description on our frontline person, and so she now reports to me. And she was our work study for years, knows the paperwork forwards and backwards, but personal contact is not her strong point, and her brother is my boss.
Oh my God. It's not good.
And I know she can do the job, but the personal part, I need help in finding her some, some kind of help, whether it's just a class to go to at one time. Most everything I get is no 11, and it's fairly expensive.
Yeah.
So if y'all are aware of any one-day, customer service type
See, I think-
things to go to?
I would guess that's almost more of a, let's do the Myers-Briggs, and you'd probably find out that the person's an introvert.
Oh, yeah.
That's my guess. And then if you have a career services on campus, do you have a career services or something?
No.
Okay, so then maybe you have a local education opportunity center for this region? EOC? Okay, well, we can get you in touch with some people. I mean, Front Range I know has an EOC that might be a little closer, but they'll do that kind of testing. And it may be something that would be good for the whole department to do. It's not just focusing on that one person.
Right.
And then you can see, like, I'm gonna call out David Williams. David was literally, and we all knew it, he was like a 30, he was just like off the chart on extrovert, I myself, when I first came to this job, was an introvert. And it's not so much about how you interface with people, it's what drains you and what recharges you. And even though that won't change, this job can definitely change your style. So I think you've got some possibilities to work with that person. I'd also think the system office would be giving you guys heck about, the potential conflict of interest or that kind of stuff. Like, you don't necessarily want to go there, but.
Yeah, he does not sign off as the secretary.
Mhm.
Our VP of instruction does because of that. And I was pretty open with him about my concerns
Yeah.
starting out, because paperwork-wise and work ethic, man, she's great.
Mhm.
She's just not that comfortable, and coming from a sales background,
Mhm.
the minute they hit the door, I want a hi and a hello and and a smile, and I know we're not getting that on a regular basis. And I don't want to continually harp on it,
Mhm.
because I know it's not comfortable for her. And she's not the only one in the front, so like you said, maybe doing a group thing would work good.
Well, I was gonna say, you don't live in Denver, do you?
No.
Well, I only know two in Denver, but I was part of this group of nonprofits. It's called Young Nonprofit Professionals and the Metro Volunteers. And they do, every single month, they do trainings on leadership skills, how to be director, training your volunteers, creating a volunteer program, all kinds of things like that are some half-day trainings that are anywhere between $50 and $75.
Oh, that's good.
So if you guys could like take a group down in Denver and that would be sort of communal activity and they're really great trainings.
And it's called youth?
Young Nonprofit Professionals, YNPN is one, and then Metro volunteers.
You have to be done.
Do you have to what?
You have to
I don't think there's an age limit.
You know, I might be wrong on this, Kim, but I think some people don't realize they're not given good customer service. I think some people think if they get the paperwork right, they did everything they're supposed to do. And it's so tough, I think, as a boss to say you're not doing this right, when internally they're here, they're thinking, I'm doing this right, I'm doing this right. So one thing I do with my staff is we do internal customer engagement surveys, where I'll have each of my staff members pick 5 people, I'll pick 5 people on campus, and we send them a short survey on that person. And then those people anonymously fill that survey out. I get the results back, I go through and edit a little to take out some stuff that I know might hurt them or offend them, something like that. But then I can get feedback from other people on campus and say, this is what people are seeing. And then so even though they're thinking, this is right, when they hear that from someone else besides you, it's so helpful. Because they think, oh, they're just harping on me because they don't like me or they don't understand what I'm doing. But when they can see that come from multiple people on campus, I think they got to acknowledge that they aren't doing it first. And I think that's tough for a lot of people. Well, go ahead.
Well, there's also some free webinars. Like I have a goal, professional goal to do 2 free webinars a month for myself. I just knocked out an hour. So Stay Maps is one that sometimes does some free stuff. They don't always do free stuff, but sometimes. Royal Company is another research place that does some customer service free webinars sometimes. And then every once in a while, I'll get a Noletta's free one. You have to look for the free ones though. Yeah, I think there's some good resources.
Well, that kind of talks about staff, looking at staff there, but you know, when you have staff members, what are things that really stand out when you see something that you're like, yeah, this person's gonna move on, this person's gonna have more opportunities? And then, what are things you see that are mistakes that, especially when you have people that come right out of college, what are some things you notice about students coming out of college, it's their first job, there's just some common things maybe they don't understand about how to move up to that next level?
Good question, yeah. I think folks who show a lot of initiative, that doesn't always work in the sense that there's some folks who don't want initiative, they only want people to do what they're told. And sometimes if there's too much initiative and everyone's just going in a random direction, that's a problem too. But I would much rather err on the side of everyone going in too many directions and then reining it back in as a group, or at least making sure that everyone has the right parameters from the beginning about, so when we did our retreat recently, we covered starting with CCCS's mission and goals, all the way down to CCD, and then to our actual division, and then within our division to the actual center, and then to our actual department, which is also a big part of CAS, is making sure that you're reviewing and updating your mission statement every year. So, no, I mean, that's an important question. As far as I'm trying to think, I've had a few folks straight out of college, and the one that comes to mind was they had no experience with Microsoft Outlook. And I think back then, Outlook wasn't as big as it is now. And it was literally like, I think I sent the person a calendar appointment, they accepted it, and then they started to panic because they couldn't find the email message with the details for the appointment anymore. And they just didn't know to switch over to calendar view.
I think you said that the initiative piece perfectly describes what I would say too. Having that self-motivation to see what needs to get done, and that I can or jump in attitude. Our office is so fast-paced, and I'm often running around just as fast that I can't be the person that's saying, you do this, you do this. It's come together, we figure out where we need to go, and then people go do it, and knowing that we're accountable to each other to get it done. Creativity, our office just strives off of what can we do next? How can we improve this? How can we do this in a way that's going to actively engage our students? So I think it's keeping it fresh and innovative. In fact, I just handed over a project to Anita, a big project that she's running now for a Perkins grant. And we told her we've done it this way for the last 3-4 years, and it's fairly established, but by all means, change it up. Like, it does not need to be the same thing as on your program. If you need suggestions, we're here to help you. But I think that, speaking of that, having someone that feels comfortable to ask questions, that maybe instead of just running forward maybe too far ahead, just double checking to see how that fits into the department's goals and mission. And I don't know, we've been pretty fortunate to end up with a lot of people that are very, have a lot of humor, and we laugh a lot. And I don't think maybe it's the recruiter outreach personality. I feel like our department is just as lively as the student life department. We just have a lot of energy. We're known for that. And I think that's just part of the field, but that energy is critical. Oh, and my most important piece that I notice in interviews and what I want is a passion for the field. Because if without that passion and all the rest, yeah, a lot of people can come in with that responsibility and that initiative, but the passion truly is what makes this job.
You know, I think one of the challenges is sometimes you have people that are really hard workers, but maybe what they're working on isn't getting the results you want. So I guess first, how do you get your staff to focus on results? And second, how do you use your results to kind of show what you're doing to upper-level administrators? So take it from your workers to you, and then from you on how you take it on up to who's above you.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if I can speak uniformly, but our institution is becoming very data-driven, data-oriented, very analytical, looking at numbers. One of the goals that we have is to increase our yield rates. So what we generally do, we want to implement this analytical aspect into our department. So we do debriefings on every single one of our events. We kind of dissect what went well, what didn't, what do we need to change. We look at surveys, feedbacks from our counselors, from our students who attended our various events to kind of analyze and find out, okay, what went well, what do we need to improve on? What are our customers saying about what we're doing? Kind of based on that, then, we'll make appropriate changes.
Well, one of the things that I noticed a couple of years ago, I got on an accreditation committee. It was AQUIP accreditation, if any of you all are doing that. We're now moving to some other program. I was actually on 2 committees. I was on the Leading and Communicating Committee, and I was on the Value People Committee. And one of the things that we really got hammered on, and that was back in 2005, was just a lack of data in general. And I think that's given me a new appreciation. And honestly, to be honest, I think all of us, all of the CCCS schools, I think it's not really our strong point, we have various pockets here and there, but the fact that we have to struggle so much to get the information we need to make good decisions is indicative of that. So it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It's definitely an opportunity for improvement, it's an area for growth. One of the things that we do, and I remember, I think one year at my height, so a lot of you may have gotten it, I did a survey of 100 people of me for feedback. It was on-campus people, off-campus people, it was some Colorado Council people, because I was in council at that point. And some of that feedback hurts, but honestly, if you really can look at it, and some of the comments are just sort of mean, and but you'll start to see those averages and the overall themes, and you can see where you're good, but you can see where you can also improve as well. And just like we were talking about with that feedback, and SurveyMonkey is a very easy free tool, and it's actually well worth the $300 we've been paying with it. In the absence of having tools that we need from our institutions. The other thing, and I think probably only Howard and I are in this situation, is we need to be able to know how we're doing. If we went to an event and talked to 100 people, how many of those 100 people applied? That answer actually can change every day, right? And this is why we're talking about the CRM so much. So what I get to the point of is, and if you're looking at CAS 2, is I look at it from the accreditation perspective and from the CAS perspective to the department. So we first orient our employees on what the measurable things are. These are our measures. So in fact, I'm going to just pass, I happen to be crunching some numbers, I'm just going to pass a chart around that I was finally able to do. I couldn't do this until just the past month, and I've been in CCD almost 10 years now. But this shows by high school as listed in the banner application, how many of our RSO prospects going all the way back to 2001 have applied by high school, and it's interesting, or at least for this current year, July 11th, well, last year, July 11th through June 12th. And I think that it's important for us to see that kind of stuff. But you first have to let your employees know what we're going to be measured at, and then we report not quite this level of detail, but we have a monthly report that we kick up, which shows now how much progress we're making toward those goals I talked about yesterday, the 3 goals, and then also how many applicants per term have applied in that month. And I'm only just able to do that with the Cognos Access I got in October.
I'm gonna open up, I got a few more questions I'm gonna close with, but does anyone in the audience have any questions? Go ahead.
How much, because I struggle with this personally, a few of them, as I leave my department on my work campus, I'm finding that I do less and less actual recruiting, like I'm out less, and how do you balance that with staying connected with your recruiters, but then your administrative responsibilities on campus, and how that looks for your team? Yes.
Like I said, at ACC, we adhere to a team approach, and I always, every now and then, I try to stay connected because I think it's good for me to be visible and out there and still connect with high schools and counselors and so forth. So I'll volunteer periodically for recruiting events still.
I still really like that piece, and I think that's where that servant leadership is tough, because I know, and since I operated for 5 years in that coordinator role, so where I was doing the whole time, and sure, I mean, there wasn't that pressure, unfortunately, to really be more strategic and think bigger picture. It was just go out and do this. So now it's retraining or training myself to be able to be okay with staying in the office and allowing time for that. And so I do more of the walk-ins, and then the folks that come in volunteer for a few events. I pitch in just as much. We rotate weekend events so that it's not everyone, same people doing the same thing or evening. Just so I can stay connected too. But I think for me, and Hannah's new in this role as coordinator, but it's really nice to trust that I know that this part of the operation is just going and it's being handled fabulously, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. And I think that's good for her as well as for me.
Yeah, same issues as Ashley. It came to a point where I had to pull back, and it was hard giving up that last high school. In hindsight, it was one of the best decisions I made. I felt like I got more respect from upper level management once I had pulled back from that. Also, it matched up better with my job description. But as the director, you have to have access to this kind of data to use that time when you're not working with students. I think, and then there's you think in big picture, and then bringing that back to your staff. And that's just one of probably about 25 slides that I did. I did it by term, I did it by gender, by Hispanic, by IPEDS race. I did it by even month of the year, so you can start to see a little flow of how many applications came in. So.
And I think one thing that's super important is just prioritizing, because I mean, all of us have 20 things we could do on any given day that would be good for the institution. I think that's when you write your list out and then prioritize it. What is the most important thing I have to do for us to meet our mission? And for me, it's sometimes that is going out on the road for a week and seeing what's going on there. The other day, it's like, no, I can't be doing that. I've got to, focus a little bit bigger picture here. So prioritizing is so difficult, but you always got to think, what's the best thing I should be doing right now, I think. There's dozens of good things you can always do.
Teach your relationships with if you have a marketing department on campus. And I guess, so we just, had a joint meeting, for instance, and, we try to come to some kind of consensus on what we're going to emphasize for the school as far as recruiting purposes, right? I mean, every school says, well, it's a great school. but whatever you emphasize. So, go ahead, what's your relationship and how's that work out?
It's a challenge. And I always think it's interesting when I speak, even with folks within Colorado, the arrangement. Because Laura, you were connected with marketing before, not now.
We were, and then the president moved us out of that. So,
Right.
yeah, we were the only ones, though, I think.
So I think-
Under marketing director.
It would make sense to have that partnership, and I think because I come from that 4-year background where admissions/recruiting departments have that in-house marketing that is directed for that, it's definitely been a challenge. It took us a couple years to get what we have now, really nice recruiting piece with commonly asked questions, but we've been asking for a non-traditional piece for a while. We've been asking for a piece that doesn't cost $2 a piece when we're out of the fairs, and this is not the best place for this material. And I would think that our marketing department would understand that and appreciate. Thankfully, they pay for the stuff. We were very fortunate. That doesn't come out of our budget, but sometimes we're not heard. But there has been some things that have been great lately. We've gotten posters finally that we can put in high schools, and I just think when things were going pretty well, we were meeting regularly to talk about our needs. And I did some surveys within the community of what areas of the community know about us, what type of things do they know about us, what perceptions do they have, because that can then help guide us with talking points. And they ask for feedback sometimes, but I feel like since they get all do that research, I'd like to hear more from them of what they want us to be promoting for the face of the college.
So in other words, they take the lead on the research and then deciding what the message, the overall message is.
Yep, and they do all the design and
Sure.
Becky has something to
One
add.
thing to add to Ashley's about our marketing department is they're always asking us, what does a typical student look like? We don't know there's not a typical student. So they're taking the initiative to go on tours with our outreach staff on campus to see what kind of questions students are asking to different groups. Hasn't happened on our campus yet, but at least the email went out, the intention to learn about our students.
I think emailing back and forth between recruitment and marketing is one of the worst things that can ever happen. Because they're always misinterpreted both ways there, I think the most valuable thing for me in my career was there's certain times I want to send an email, but I take the time to walk over and sit down with our director of marketing and just chat with her a little bit. It usually ends up being about a half hour longer than I would have hoped, but I think it makes it so much easier when you send that email to get a response. And so many people on campus, you send an email, it's like it goes into never land. That's what Jerry kind of mentioned yesterday, Too many times we rely on email or text messages when it needs to be a face-to-face conversation. And it's tough because you don't have a whole lot of time, but it can save you so much time down the road, I think.
At CCD, we have actually a director of public relations. We have who's in the president's office, maybe it's director of community relations, and then we also have a web person who's really more IT, and then we have a director of marketing who's actually now, instead of under the IT kind of administrative aegis, that person now reporting to our vice president of student development. So it's continued to shift, but I feel like there's a little better of an organization if you're in the same division, if that's possible. And I mean, in my experience, we have to just stay on them, or else we don't get view books in time in September. And they're busy, and everybody's coming at them with different needs. And I'm usually very happy with what they give us. It's just an issue of, and I think they're open to our input, and they'll show us proofs and things like that. So but it's just kind of making sure that they're on the cycle, on that annual cycle along with us. And I think we're there this year.
Do you call the shots, Ari? Essentially, we're going to emphasize for CCD this aspect or whatever the other, or do they have some input?
I don't really I would say it's more of, so this year we're getting a new view book, and we've had sort of the same view book for a while. And even before that view book, it was very similar, sort of a smiling person on the front cover, certain colors and pages and stuff. And now it's this whole new kind of, I don't know how to explain it, sort of like cartoony,
It's
like
graphic.
it's a graphic kind of thing. And we'll show them to you on the circuit when we get them. But you know, she sent us a copy, and one of the things was they had taken out the steps to enrollment completely. And we said, no, we gotta have that in there. So while you're giving this to prospective students, right, so they're not really, I'm like, even if it's real short, we've gotta have that in there somehow. And I felt like she was open to that. So I wouldn't say I call the shots, but see, that's the kind of minutia and detail I don't think I would want to call the shots on. And I mean, as far as the color palette, and I know some of my more aesthetically minded folks, I know Shannon and Susie have had their opinions.
No,
and
I'm
she's-
asking for the
She
big
collaborates
picture,
really well with us.
you know?
You mean the big picture thing?
Obviously, they take care of the color palette, and if it's marketing departments, but they're branding. I guess that's what.
They really they play a big role in the branding, and I think that really comes more from higher up. So for example, our schedule of classes and our catalog, which they're very involved with, I think are going to also have that same branding that our viewbooks are going to have this year.
In case you guys, how you continue to develop as leaders.
Well, in my top 5 strengths are input and learner. So I'm constantly just soaking in as much as I possibly can. And then doing that with our department as well. So I like to have those little professional development moments in our staff meetings. And then I think just being involved on committees and other organizations, for example, being on the Colorado Council for High School and College Relations, that was a great opportunity to network, get to know more about myself, meet other people, and develop some leadership skills in another capacity that's outside of my regular role that can help you for that next step.
Well, I'm in a PhD program because I have too much spare time on my hands. So, you know, I'm done with all the coursework. I'm at the dissertation phase. It's been pretty tough. Both of my children were born in the middle of this program. Actually, my daughter's born in the first semester, the middle of the first semester of the program. So that's one thing, and I feel like it's doing a lot for me up here, but also when I get it, it's going to open a lot of doors. And then also I was president of Colorado Council, and by the way, everybody, we're looking for a 2-year community college rep, Howard, to be a president this year for the next 3-year term. So everybody keep that in mind. Howard keeps saying no, but we got to keep asking him. So those would be a couple things. The other thing I would say, I guess before I got into my PhD program, when I had more time, was anytime there is a job that someone else, that nobody else wants to do, or a job like accreditation that everyone's like, oh my God, it's going to be so much extra work, and I don't want to do this, take it, because that experience, I think, really helps you. I mean, especially I feel like the accreditation experience has helped me so much, even in just departmental planning and accountability.
I forgot to add, I'm very reflective. So when I was mentioning the evaluations, the 360 evaluations, and or maybe even like the staff time debrief, I take those conversations and reflect on it. So what was my part in that? What did I contribute that was great? What could I have done better? What do I need to do to challenge myself for that next step? And I think if you're really intentional, that's what helps you get to that next step. When you start to get, you're just doing the normal status quo, it really doesn't help you to develop into that, to more of what you can be.
And I think just staying highly connected with like administration, things that are going on at your institution. Show that you care, show that the recruiting department is very influential as far as decision making that goes on your campus. And then impose that on your staff, you know, get them involved, make sure that they're connected with faculty members, other segments of your institution. Show that it's the entire recruiting department that's showing leadership, not just one single individual.
You kind of answered this a little bit, but if people in this group were looking to step up their leadership level, what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
As I tell these guys, be out there, you know, be visible, be a positive yes person, you know, be helpful wherever you can, get involved with clubs, organizations, committees, put yourself out there. As Ari stated, a lot of my former employees, they've gone on to, now Andrew's your manager at your welcome center. Chris is one of your academic advisors. I have Dustin at the Daniels Fund. So they've gone on, they've moved on to, more higher leadership aspects and positions. So, and these guys are doing the same thing. They're Edward's highly involved, but what he just started, but he's involved with CESDA organization or outreach, and Karen's highly involved with Colorado Council. So.
I think also, if I get in a time machine and go back and talk to myself, that's what I would say. Plan to stay at a job for 2 to 5 years and then move. Even if it's a lateral move in a new institution, it gives you more exposure and it gives you more experience. And also it just sort of psychologically makes you more valuable. The days of sort of being loyal to one institution doesn't really fly anymore. In fact, we've even seen folks like, Lori, she left CCD, she went to SunGuard, and then she went to Front Range. And now she's back at CCD and she's my boss, So, it's okay to kind of keep it moving, You don't want to be leaving like every 3 months, every 6 months, I think a year is sometimes a minimum, so you can kind of get in trouble with that sometimes if you do that too much. But definitely every 2 to 5 years, you want to keep moving. And for me, once the PhD is done, I'll be ready to move, so.
One thing I've always done is I look at other job descriptions. So when I was looking for positions, I have never stopped getting those notifications. And I use it as a way for me to be intentional about those experiences that I need to make sure I'm getting. So what is that next step? What are these other jobs that are out there that I didn't even know existed? So and that's a great thing, that opportunity that we have at community college. Most of the time it's great. Sometimes it's not great, wearing multiple hats. Sometimes too many hats and confuse which one you have on. But I think that's great because we have that opportunity to get a lot of diverse experiences, which we can go forward and take in other areas. But it's just nice to look to see, maybe you intentionally need to get on that accrediting committee, or maybe you need to write a grant because this other position that's one of your dream positions has a grant writing piece or web updates or whatever that is. Because usually, especially once you've been at a place for about a year, you can intentionally get on committees to gain those experiences to take with you for your next role.
And I would add to that, any hiring committees in your own institution you can get on to that your supervisor is okay with as far as the time committed. Get on those. I actually managed to be on the last hiring committee for the president of CCD. Now doing a new hiring committee, and to my knowledge, I'm not going to be on that. But when I saw these thick files and all the amazing things these folks have done, and a lot of those folks didn't even get interviews. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm back. That was a few years ago. I was earlier in my program, and I was really like, I'm going to get this PhD and I would be a president one day. And I'm not so sure about that anymore. But at the time, that was just such a great eye opener. I thought, these guys didn't even get interviews, and they're amazing, all the things that they've done. So.
And if you want to move up in education, you got to keep on adding letters behind your name.
Yeah.
That's the way it works.
Yeah.
So that's something to and if you can keep going when you're younger and get more letters behind your name,
Yeah.
do it.
Do it before you have children.
It's a lot of PhD and a couple little ones, stuff like that. After we're done, hopefully you can ask them a few more individual questions you have, but is there anyone on staff of any of these people, like you mentioned, one thing they really like about them as a supervisor?
I think with Howard's department, he works really good with his employees and allowing them to grow. So Howard's kind of like a Red Bull. So he gives you a project and he gives you wings to be able to do whatever you want. So he's not like on top of you where it's like, all right, we're good at this, what are you doing? It's kind of like, all right, this is what you need to do, so do it when it's needed.
It's just to kind of follow on Howard again. It's definitely a situation where I was, previous positions that I had, I wasn't given an opportunity to really spread my wings like that. And Howard definitely gives you the opportunity to do that. And Ari, you mentioned it too. It's just a situation where you just need to be able to let a person fly and able to grow. Because if you give them that short sliver of that job description. They're not gonna grow into do, grow up, want to do great things, and Howard definitely